Welcome, everybody, to the Indiana Basketball Weekly Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I am your host for the Indiana Basketball Weekly Show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I would like to bring in my co-host, the author of the award-winning best-selling book, Oops, Kent Sterling. How you doing, Kent?
I feel very bipolar today, Mike. I got kind of a tug of war going on in my head. The one side of my brain says overreact to everything. The other side says, oh, just calm down. It takes a while to pivot an aircraft carrier, and that's what Archie Miller is trying to do with Indiana basketball.
Yeah, a Tom Crean made aircraft carrier.
But that's correct. That's correct.
That...
I'm just arguing with the guy on Twitter about this. The guy's like, hey, he won 2 Big Ten titles in 4 years. National media laughs at us. Like, they don't get it. They don't understand what this was and what it was becoming.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically you've got to change the culture Tom Crean had. And that culture is to get a bunch of really good players. And every once in a while, you'll be really good. But for the most part, your program is never going to be what it should be. And the one thing I like about this, it seems like Devontae Green gets less and less playing time each game.
You know, and that's really what happened last night. He got 15 minutes. And the entire bench got 53 minutes. And so he's skinnied the rotation a little bit, and I think that that's necessary. Good for him. I don't mind Jerome Hunter getting minutes. I think he needs minutes, and I think he shows kind of what he's capable of doing. You look at his line, and obviously there's not a lot to like. He was 1 of 5 from the field, had 3 rebounds, 3 turnovers, 2 points. That's not great in 19 minutes, but I think there's upside to him we haven't seen.
Well, and he's not going to get any better unless he plays. And
right.
When I look at this, yeah, I don't like getting beat 59-50 by freaking Rutgers, and I don't care how good Rutgers is supposed to be. It's still Rutgers. And, you know, I mean, they had to honor their last great team, which happened in 1976. That was a long time ago. I was like 8 years old. But my big takeaway from this is this. If Devontae Green suddenly wasn't playing at all, I would be all right with whatever I see because I still think the culture thing is big. I think the guys that are seniors were Tom Crean guys, and I think until those are eliminated, we're going to have these issues. And overall, I am very disappointed that the Tom Crean guys weren't shown the door when Archie got here because that's the way I would have done it, because if you want to change a culture, you got to eradicate the bad culture that's already there, and I think that's why this has taken so long.
You know, and there is an upside to that, but the downside that would have existed in 17-18 and 18-19, we would have had what happened in 08-09. And, it would have been scorched earth. You would have had a difficult time putting a team on the court that was going to be competitive at all. And so that was difficult. And I applaud Archie Miller for doing it the way he did. It was humane. They didn't hold the kids responsible for the sins of Tom Crean. And so they were retained, and you try to do what you can with those guys. But the residue of that is that you really see, you talk about bipolar, these guys are split down the middle, the seniors and then the juniors who were recruited by Crean, and then those recruitments were honored by Indiana and Archie Miller. Those guys play with one set of heads, and the guys who are recruited by Miller play with an entirely different set of heads. So you never really get a cohesive product on the floor on either end. And I think that's what's driving fans nuts, is that they just don't look connected on the defensive end, and they're almost never efficient on the offensive end.
But the big thing is this, keeping those guys may have got us a little over 500, but that's all it got us.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's exactly right. But it wouldn't have brought greatness quicker, I don't think. You know, I think that Archie's done a really good job of recruiting the state of Indiana, and that's going to have to be, you know, where Indiana plants its flag and where either greatness or competence comes from. I'm not sure which we're going to get as kind of the high water mark in the Archie Miller kind of era. But I think that you've got to recruit Indiana, and that to recruit Indiana, you have to show that you're going to be a little bit competitive. And so I think they were, but I get what you say. I mean, to me, it's not a 100-0 kind of argument. It's about 55-45, and it just depends on which side of the line you're on, how you see it.
All right, let's look at last night's game, which came down to this. Defensively, I thought the Hoosiers were pretty good. offensively, I don't think you could be worse. I mean, you got to put the ball in the basket. Justin Smith was 6 for 10. Joey Brunk was 5 for 10. Everybody else was horrid. And this team shot 31.7% from the field. And I'm going to venture to guess if you shoot 31.7% from the field, you're not going to win too many games, Ken.
No, and they started the game by missing their first at least 14 three-pointers. I think they were 0 for 14 at their worst. And that really makes it easy to defend. I mean, that's you're so one-sided in the way you're attacking. They didn't make a shot, I don't think, outside the lane in like the first 30 minutes of the game. So that makes it really easy. And that's what, I mean, Fred Hoiberg's no idiot on Saturday. He's going to pack the paint and try to make Indiana beat them for the cheap seats, like Shooter Flatch said back there in Hoosiers. And, we'll see if Indiana can make some shots. But if you can't make three-pointers, you become very one-dimensional, and Indiana was. And that isn't going to get it done. And then you have a bench that you've kind of relied on for offense throughout the season when you were successful. That bench scored a total of 2 points, and that 2 came on a putback by Jerome Hunter with about 5 minutes left in the game.
Yeah, and it's going to be hard to win in a conference where it's almost impossible to win on the road when you have no seniors. And beyond that, there's just no leadership here again.
No, and that's, that's where Crean would get, you talk about one-dimensional. He was very one-dimensional in his recruiting. He didn't recruit attitude. He didn't recruit leadership. What he recruited were measurables. And those measurables were enough to get you wins periodically, but they weren't enough to establish a consistent culture of excellence or, again, of competence. And so he went away, and now you're stuck with the guys that he left us, and that's Devontae and Duran and Justin and Al. And you know what? I mean, you got at least 3/4 of those guys who look a little bit indifferent to what's going on the floor, and that's not good.
Well, I think one does for sure, and I still think the best way to get everybody's attention is to eliminate that one.
That's the Bob Knight school of thought, right? One bad apple can spoil the whole bunch. If he doesn't want to honor the jersey that he wears, then you move him along. And here's the dichotomy, right? And where I get really, really I get pulled in one direction and then pulled in the other, is that I think that it's laudable that Archie Miller looks at a guy like Devontae Green and says, let's continue to work with this guy. Let's continue to invest in this guy. And then on the other hand, it's kind of like, what are you doing? It's sort of like having that problem kid in class in the 4th grade who's taken 40% of the teacher's attention away from the other 24 kids in the class who are trying to learn. You get rid of that kid, it lifts everyone. And that's what I think Devontae Green is on this team.
Yeah, but how about this? A 4th grader is different from a young adult. And, if he's a 4th grader, I could see trying to save him. But right now, it does not look savable. And I still think you could get those other guys' attention if you were to make a move like that. The other thing I see here is 16 turnovers, but not just 16 turnovers. 16 turnovers that turned into 18 points, which is a third of all the points Rutgers scored.
Yeah, and certainly and double the amount of points that they won by. And the turnovers, as is always the case with Indiana, it's not like the turnovers were turnovers of commission. It's somebody dribbling off his leg. It's Devontae Green not protecting the ball as he dribbles. It's Justin Smith kind of holding the ball with one hand or bringing it away from his body so it can be slapped. And this is against a team that I'm sure the scout was that you've got to protect the basketball because these guys are really handsy in trying to poke it loose. And they just didn't do that last night. I mean, and if you didn't get that in the scout, then at least in the first 4 or 5 minutes of the game, you had to figure that out because that's exactly what they were doing, and they were still lazy with the basketball.
Well, I mean, Devontae Green, the one that stands out to me, which was, I think, the death knell, was where he's dribbling the ball down and decides to go between his legs when he didn't have to and dribbles off his own foot. I mean, that to me, and I'm pretty sure Archie did yank him from the game there, but... I mean,
yeah, with prejudice. He clearly pissed off, went straight to the bench, and I think there was a timeout, went straight to the bench, told him to get on, and then waved Devontae to the bench. And I think that was the play. Not only did he lose it, but then the guy goes in for the layup, misses the bunny, and Devontae, because he had his head up his ass, doesn't get the rebound.
Yeah, and head up your ass should get you to bench for a long time, not just the last few minutes of a game, because the milk was already spoiled. It was already rotten. You can't put it back in and drink it. I know that I didn't say that right, but I don't really care because I'm going to put it in my new book called Oops, Also. All right. So they turned the ball over. They can't shoot, but they played defense. But the other thing that really stood out to me was the lack of aggression offensively. They only shot 12 free throws last night. The one good thing is they did make 10 of them, but if you're on the road and you're not shooting the ball, I think if it wasn't a layup, they were like 4 for 32 or 4 for 34 last night.
Yeah, that's obviously that's not sustainable, but that's kind of a good news.
It has been so
too.
Far.
It's sort of you look at it, and the cup half full statement to that is that this wound up being a 9-point game. At one point, it was 8 with a couple of minutes left. You were still in the game somehow or another. And so that tells you that either the level of defense you were playing or that Rutgers is just stone cold incapable of scoring the basketball almost at the same level that IU was last night.
Well, they were last night, but I do think the good thing there is that was because of IU's defense, because I think that was the lowest amount of points they'd been held to at home last night or for the entire season. And when you look at this, they've got Nebraska next, which makes people think that'll be easy. But Nebraska blew out Purdue on their home floor. Who else did they lose? They beat Iowa on their home floor. So this, once again, is a road game for a team that has not won a true road game yet this year. This is a game that I think if you want this to turn into playing in March and something that's not the CBI or the NIT, this has to be a win on Saturday.
It does have to be a win on Saturday. And if Indiana fans don't remember much about Nebraska, let's remember the 96-90 overtime win by Indiana that very easily could have been a loss. Nebraska's coming off 2 road losses to Northwestern, for goodness sake, and Ohio State, but they are a different kettle of fish on their home court. And Indiana may be favored in this game, and Nebraska does a lot of things poorly and not so many things well, but you can't look at Nebraska and think, okay, we're just going to roll into town and get the win, because that's not what this team is. But if you don't get the win, holy crap, can this thing go sideways in a hurry?
I think this thing has already gone sideways. I think the only way to pull it back so you're at least 3/4 in the right direction is to beat Nebraska at Nebraska.
You have to. I mean, look at the way Nebraska shoots the basketball. They are really not good at anything. Their free throw percentage is 58.9. That's 350th out of 353 Division I programs. From beyond the arc, they're kind of middle tier at 33.6. And then shooting twos, they're 47.4. They're really not very good at a lot. But they are good. Oddly, they're really good at preventing what Indiana is really good at, and that's making teams beat them from the foul line. They don't put their opponents on the foul line a lot at all.
So there's something Indiana's good at. All right.
Well, until last night.
It seems like when they get to the foul line 35 times, they then make 19 and lose by 4. So
yeah, I don't get that. I mean, what they do and what they don't do is just so non-Indiana, right? And I'm not talking about going back to the Indianas of the 70s and 80s like people are always talking, like that's all we want. We just want them to look like they did under Bob Knight. We want that. That's not what we want. We want connected defensive play, and we want efficiency on the offensive end. We want crisp movement. I mean, let's go. Yeah, but other teams do that. Butler does that really, really well. Purdue did that great last year. And so it still exists. It's not like in this time capsule of basketball buried in Bob Knight's backyard. It exists. It's out there. There are a lot of teams that do it. I just wish Indiana was one of them.
Yeah, the one good thing right now is the Big Ten is a mess, and I know I did a Big Ten power rankings last night, and I'm looking at it like every team won at home last week and lost on the road.
Yeah.
And when you look at that, that tends to make me think that this conference, it's not parity, it's mediocrity. Because you've got nobody that can win on the road, and everybody keeps telling me, well, when you watch these Big Ten, they're going to be tough during tournament time. But how are you going to be tough during tournament time when you can't win a road game in your conference?
I think you're going to have about 40 teams come March in the NCAA tournament that have a chance to go to the Final Four. The parity in college basketball, to me, is just awesome. From top to bottom in the Big Ten, top to bottom in the Big East, top to about midway through in the ACC, you've got teams that the Big 12 is mostly terrific. You got a lot of teams that can play at a high level, and come March, you could have a 5 seed, a 7 seed, a 9 seed, and a 6 seed in the Final Four somehow or another. I don't know how you'll possibly go about picking that tournament, but it gives Indiana a chance at life, right? Because Indiana, you look at them and you look at their capabilities, and in some cases the boxes they check, and they check about as many as most teams in the Big Ten. And if they could be the first team to get their heads out of their ass and start playing good connected basketball, although we haven't seen it in a long time in Bloomington, hey, you know what? They got a shot to be pretty good, and pretty good might be enough.
Enough for what?
Well, that's the question. I didn't want to go any farther with that. Good for you for calling me out.
Because I really think this. When I watch this team, I think there's a chance that they could piddle their way through, win 20 games, be an 11 seed, and lose in the first 4 in Dayton. And I think that's the ceiling, though, because I really don't think the talent is there. I think Rob Fennessy is a really good point guard, but at some point we got to ask, is he really as good as we hoped he would be? Or if he's really that good and just been hurt and things have happened to him. And when you look at it, your best player, Devontae Green, when he is disconnected and doesn't show up all the time, it's really hard to say you're a good team. Your best player right now is Trace Jackson Davis, who's a freshman. And the problem with Trace Jackson Davis is he's got to get somebody to get him the ball. He's not the point guard. And we have not been efficient this year doing that. I mean, this is a team, when you look at the post players for Indiana, they should be able to dominate a game inside. And last night, there was very little inside play. It was basically we throw the ball around the perimeter. Somebody, panics at the 10-second mark, shoots a 3, or throws a ball off their own foot. The other team gets the ball. And I just think what we have gotten so far this year is what we're probably going to get, except for the occasional BS game where things just happen to fall in. Because there's 5 good players on this team, and that's about it.
And they don't all play different positions. And you even try to look at it and say, okay, here's my starting 5. And my starting 5 right now would include Devontae Green, because he's the only guy who presents any kind of threat from beyond the arc. And if you don't have him on the floor, the defense, all 5 guys can have a foot in the lane, and you're totally screwed from getting Trace Jackson Davis or Joey Brunk the ball in a place where they can score it. And that's big trouble. I mean, Rob Fennessy is not respected as a three-point shooter, despite the first couple that he made against Ohio State. Justin Smith can't shoot it from out there. Al Durham can't shoot it from out there. So, I mean, what the hell? This is the easiest team to prepare to defend in college basketball to me, unless Devontae Green's on the floor. To me, the guy where all my hope resides for this team making some kind of upward advancement into the first division of the Big Ten is Jerome Hunter, because he's got upside. He had the leg issue. If he can get his shot right, I think that this guy was a top 40 recruit out of Ohio. And if you can get him right, you got a chance to be okay. You could have that starting kind of 2/3 where you could pair him with Justin Smith, and all of a sudden maybe you get some continuity in your offense. But other than that, I've got the guy that we loathe worst actually moving from the bench into the starting lineup, and that ain't good.
Well, see, where I would have him move is back home with his parents, because I still think this. this team is, I think, pretty good defensively. And I think that if you remove Devontae Green from this lineup, I think that you would see a lot more out of Al Durham. But how about this? What about Armand Franklin? He's a freshman. Let him play and make mistakes, and let him get better. Let's do this. And I brought it up last year when we did the Indiana basketball show with, Cole and Colin and all those guys. And the point is, you need to prepare for next year, because this team is not capable of winning a Big Ten championship this year. So let's play Armand Franklin. Let's see if Demezy Anderson can play, which I'm pretty sure he can't from what I've seen. But let him play. Let him shoot. Tell him to go out and shoot the ball, because that's what he was brought here to do. He's like 6'6", 6'7". He was a sharpshooter in high school. Put him out on a wing and let him fire it. Why let Devontae Green? Devontae Green is there for Devontae Green. He's there because he thinks he can play in the NBA, and I hate to tell him this. If he's playing 15 minutes against Rutgers and he's not scoring a point, he's not playing in the NBA. So get his ass out of here. Send him home with mom and dad, and let's just put the screws to this. Let's go out and play defense. Let Demezy shoot. Let Rob Fennessy shoot. Let these guys shoot. Let them go have a little bit of fun. Run around and play as hard as they possibly can, and I would be happy with that.
I think you'd be happy with it until you saw it.
No, I wouldn't, because I can't see anything worse than last night.
Well, if you let Demezy Anderson run around and shoot, last night Demezy played 3 minutes and shot it 4 times, and he missed all of those shots, and I don't think any of them were close to being inside the cylinder. So to me, like, he hasn't shown an ability to hit threes. I get it. You brought him down from South Bend to do exactly that, but I've never seen him shoot it the same way twice. That's problematic. I agree with you on Armand Franklin. I'm getting him on the floor. He makes some mistakes defensively, makes some mistakes on the offensive end, but that is going to help him become a better player. And at some point, that is going to be the deal. But I don't think that they're ready to, throw this season in the trash heap and say, okay, we're just going to prepare for 2021. I think the Big Ten, like you said, is in such chaos that they could figure out a way into 10 or 11 conference wins, be a 9 seed, go into the tournament, maybe win a game and show progress in that way and enhance their position as a recruiting destination if they can get that done.
I think this, as long as Devontae Green is playing, this team will never see the NCAA tournament.
You know what I really like about this episode of our show is I sound like the sane one. And that is
I'm
a
always
position
the sane one.
I want.
You just don't realize it because you're insane.
I'm trying to craft a brand here where I'm actually the sane guy, and this is the first time ever that I could look myself in the mirror afterward and say, you know what, you didn't sound like the nut.
Well, how about this,
I think we're moving in the right direction.
This is the thing I do realize, all right? And the thing is this, there is no way this team could win 10 or 11 conference games because they would have to win probably 3 or 4 away games, which they can't do. If you cannot win with what you have, you dramatically change things. Because I have never coached a team during a season, even if we started a season 0-3, just to make it somewhere. You coach to win championships. And if you're not coaching to win a championship, you should be coaching to win the championship next year. And
well, I get that, but don't you also coach to win each individual game and put your team in a position to win the game that's ahead of you instead of looking kind of globally at the whole thing? Don't you want to win? Doesn't Indiana, if Indiana was, let's say, 5-12 in the Big Ten and was playing at Nebraska this weekend, wouldn't you be coaching these guys to win that game?
Yes, but that's how you coach to win the game, because what I am doing is not working. And I have people that are not completely on board with my philosophy. And this is my problem with the whole thing is year one.
Yeah.
It's great to keep guys because they've got scholarships. But IU could have offered those scholarships. All those kids could have went somewhere else and played. I think when you go into a place and that place is poisoned by the idiocy of Tom Crean, you have to scorch the earth. Rick Pitino in 1989, when he got to Kentucky, scorched earth, got rid of everybody. Yeah. And they only won 4 games. But 3 years later, they're in the Elite Eight. And they were with a team that, Kentucky fans to this day love more probably than any team they had, even though they came up short against Duke in the Elite Eight, because that team fought their ass off. That's all I want to see. When I talk about seeing a team that played like Bobby Knight's team, I'm not talking about man-to-man defense. I'm not talking about motion offense. I'm talking about a team that will go out there and they will fight their ass off. If they lose, I'm all right with that. But I'm not all right with watching a guy showboat down the court, try to dribble between his legs, dribble off his foot, give the other team the ball, half-ass it back on defense, and give up 2 points in a game where you're only down 7 or 8 points. That's all I'm saying. And I don't think there's a chance that Demezy Anderson could do what I just said I wanted to see him do. But I also know this. As a sophomore, we got to find out if he can or not, because I also think that last year his confidence was destroyed. And I think it is this year, because when you put a guy in that's supposed to be a shooter and you tell him to shoot and he misses his first 3 shots and you pull him out, that really does nothing for him. If you show him that you believe he can make the shot, then maybe he slows down, because when you watch him in high school, he had the same motion every time he shot. And he shot almost, I think it was like 57% from three-point range. So I think he's not comfortable in the offense because it's different than what he's used to. And I think you got to find out if he can play or not. And if he can't, you need to get him the hell out of here.
You need to be, in order to make shots in college, you got to be a tough guy. You have to have great confidence in your ability to play basketball, and not just to shoot the basketball, but create open shots and belong on the floor. And that's a tough thing for guys to be able to do. Some guys can come in like Calvert Chaney and just kind of be that guy. Calvert Chaney was never – he didn't go from being a mediocre freshman to being a good sophomore and then a confident and great junior. He walked onto the Indiana campus knowing exactly who he was and being exactly that guy. And you've got to be – I talked to Ted Kitchell about this, and there were times when Bob Knight put Kitchell in the game and said, Ted, I'm telling you, if you shoot it, I'm taking your scholarship, or I'm pulling your ass right out of the game. And Ted, in his head, said, you know what, screw you. This is what I do. And went out, first time down, shot it, made it, and glared at Knight. You kind of need guys like that. And I don't know whether they make them like that anymore, but I think that Archie would like somebody to – I'd like to see somebody step up and kind of be that tough-ass guy, that kind of Michael Lewis guy or that Calvert Chaney guy who's tougher than hell and understands that you got to listen to your coach, but you got to be who you are, and you've got to be team first about it. But you have to do what you do well and do it with unshakable confidence. And if you're not able to do that, then you can't play.
Well, how about this? They make guys like that, but Archie would have to recruit guys like that to get guys like that. And he's not done that. And that's been my problem with it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we'll see what happens. And as always, we hope for the best. And look at these guys and look at the recruits coming in, guys like Anthony Leal and Trey Galloway, and hopefully in the following class, maybe the Lander kid and the first kid, and keep recruiting the hell out of Indiana. And hopefully once this team is filled with Archie Miller guys, we see the results of the culture he's trying to build. Because if this is what we're going to see long term out of this program, this doesn't work.
Well, how about this? I think for all the people calling for Archie's head, if this team still looks like this next year when these guys are gone that we think are the big issue, you then probably have a complaint. But I think we're really not going to know whether Archie should have his ass out of here or not for 2 years. Everybody needs to relax and chill out, because if you do get rid of him right now, you're just starting all over again.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You restart the clock. We're 2.5 seasons into Archie. You fire Archie after this one, you're resetting the clock back to year one of a new thing where that guy's going to have to rebuild a culture to his desire. And who the hell wants that? I mean, people who go off half-cocked, I think are people who haven't really managed anything and don't understand that you've got to examine the unforeseen consequences that you got to foresee the consequences, right? You have to look at it and say, okay, who are we going to hire? You can't fire a guy without knowing you're going to hire somebody better, or you're a moron. And these guys aren't morons.
All right, we have a question on Twitter, which you can direct messages at Grilling Truth. This is from Jack in Ohio, who says, Ted Kitchell is full of shit. If another NIT bid, will Miller be the coach again next year? If the answer is yes, will there be new change to the assistant staff? Thanks for the question, Jack.
Well, I disagree with part A. I've known Ted Kitchell for a long time. I've never known him to be full of shit ever.
Yeah, I do know former players from IU that are, though.
Oh, hell yeah. You could stack them like cordwood. But the great Ted Kitchell is not among them. As for the second one, it depends on the new AD. If the AD was going to continue to be Fred, then I would say, the staff is Archie's. And he's going to continue. Look, Tom Ostrom's doing a good job as a recruiter. By all accounts, by recruiting experts that I talk to all the time, he is an absolute A-plus type recruiter guy. He builds relationships great. He understands the game. As for Mike Roberts, this is his first year on the staff, and I don't know exactly what he's doing. Bruiser Flint, I don't know. I know nothing about him other than he's been a head coach and a mildly successful one. So who knows? But that's Archie's purview. Now, if you get like an activist AD hired who's going to micromanage stuff and demand that Archie do X, Y, and Z, I hope to God that doesn't happen.
Or a GM, or a guy that just wants his own guy.
Oh, God. Yeah, that'd be terrible. But I remember Rick Greenspan walking into Assembly Hall, sitting in his seat with his stupid reading glasses and his legal pad, jotting down notes during the game. I don't need that guy as the athletic director. I don't need some lunatic thinking that he knows basketball better than his head coach, and he's going to write down a bunch of stuff, a lot of concerns on a legal pad during a game. Hopefully they get a guy who knows. I'd love to see him hire Chris Reynolds, because yes, Chris Reynolds, he's going to know the shot. And he could be a resource and a great oversight guy for the program. Hopefully they hire the right guy, and that guy knows to let the coach be the coach.
All right, guys. Jack, thank you for the question. Except for the bad words, profanity is never permitted on the show. All right, Kit, before we wrap this up, they play Nebraska on Saturday night. Do they win or not?
Yeah, I think they win. I think they'll come back and win. They seem to respond well. Yeah, I'm going to paint myself into an awful corner here, but at least this season they've responded well to adversity. When they get a little bit of humility, they kind of respond to it. I think they're going to go to Nebraska. They're going to get a win, and I think that road win is going to spawn another road win, and that they're going to wind up treading water in the Big Ten and being sort of a 10-10 team. And I think that's a good thing this year.
All right, Kent. So we're going to switch places again on this, and I think they're going to get the crap kicked out of them in Nebraska. I think we were all doomed. This is the Titanic. We just hit the iceberg, and we've got 30 minutes to get our stuff and get off.
Good Lord. Well, let's hope not. Let's hope that Cam Mack doesn't hit a shot, and they don't do a whole lot good. So if you lose to Nebraska, with Michigan State and Maryland right ahead of you, I don't think that is going to.
Hey, remember this,
really not going to make us optimistic.
Purdue lost to them and then came out and blew out Michigan State the next game.
Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason with any of this. The entire Big Ten's just a mess. How about Nebraska? Although this was at Ohio State, they lose to Ohio State by 12, and then that's right on the heels of Ohio State getting the crap kicked out of them by Indiana. So. Who knows what's going to happen Saturday? That's why we watch, I guess.
Well, we got another message from Jack from Ohio, who said this was a great show and he loved the answers.
Well, he's very, very nice, very generous. You're off the hook, Jack, because you called Ted Kitchell out, and I'm not going to allow that kind of crap on this show.
Oh, he just said Ted Kitchell was everybody. Hey, you know what? We've both said stuff today that means we're full of shit, but most of the time we don't. So there you go. All right.
That's the thing, that people didn't understand. Like, if you do a 3-hour radio show and people hold you accountable for like one sentence within it, good Lord, sit in front of a microphone for 3 hours and make sense. Damn, it's hard.
So now the second book Kent writes will be, Oops, I'm Full of Shit. But tell people where they can get the
picture of me
first
on the cover
one.
is going to be me on a toilet.
Yeah,
nice.
Tell everybody where they can get your first book. Oops.
You go to, let's make it simple. You don't have to go to the other places. Go to Amazon and just search Oops and Sterling or Kent Sterling, and up pops the yellow book. You can order the ebook, the audio book, or the hardcover book. It's filled with 37 different things that I did that caused me pain and that I learned from them. I tell you what I did and what I learned. It is educational, and in some places, if you like laughing at the expense of others, then this is right up your alley.
Yeah, and I thought the cool part is how you had the foreword written by Tom Crean.
Tom Crean can be a really nice guy. I'll bet if I asked him for a blurb, he would have provided one.
Yeah, but who wants that? Then nobody from Indiana's buying your book.
That's the truth. It would have sold like hotcakes down in Athens, Georgia, because they haven't figured out yet that he, too, is full of shit.
Oh, they'll figure it out soon. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Game Saturday. What time is the game? It's Saturday evening,
7 o'clock.
Isn't it? All right. When do we want to do our next show? Do we want to wait till Monday or what?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
That's what you call it.
All right, guys. You can hear us on Monday to break down the Indiana win over Nebraska. I laughed. I'm sorry. But make sure you check us out one way or the other. We're going to talk about Indiana and Nebraska. You can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio. I want to remind you also, we have a AFC and NFC championship preview show tomorrow with myself and Anthony Servino on the NFL show. Our special guest will be former San Francisco 49er Randy Cross. So make sure you check us out as we break down the games there. But for now, for Kent Sterling, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.